What's going on, guys? It's Malcolm the Machine Wellmaker, UFC Bantamweight fighter, and I'm here with the Fans View Podcast.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Fans View Podcast. This week on the podcast, we're going to step away from the world of professional wrestling. I mean, we're going to stay under the TKO banner, but we're going to move over here to the UFC, and we're going to talk to just one of the most genuinely good human beings I know, who will also put you to sleep if you don't talk right to him.
Right.
I want to welcome onto the show, guys, Mr. Malcolm the Machine Wellmaker, UFC Bantamweight competitor, Malcolm Wellmaker.
What's going
Malcolm,
on, man?
how you doing, brother? How's that sound?
It sounds incredible, man. I'm doing great. Life is good. Finally got my opportunity to make my debut. Obviously, been a long time waiting for that. But, man, did they give me a great opportunity. Boy, did they give me a great fight. Life is good. I can't complain, man. So, yeah, I'm excited to hear my name be called on that microphone, to compete in an arena, you know what I mean, in front of a crowd, and hopefully put on a show, man.
Yes, sir. I mean, first things first, and I was kind of alluding to it. Anything cool happened since your last appearance, on the Fans View podcast? Maybe some cool stuff's happened, huh?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in my own life, I adopted a dog. You know what I'm saying? We did that. That's amazing. I got a baby on the way. Baby is probably gonna be here the week or the week after my fight. So fatherhood is on the way. I mean, it's fast, man. It's crazy. Super busy. I got my baby shower coming up, so I'm nonstop. I'm wide open, man.
As a father of a 3-year-old, I'm thinking about you. Thoughts and prayers, my man.
Appreciate it, homie.
How shocked, I'm going to just jump into it with you because I know your time is very precious. How shocked were you by that reception at the airport? Were you aware of that happening, or was that like a legitimate surprise? Because that was powerful.
Bro, 100% surprised, bro. I remember getting off the plane, walking through the terminal, and my coach asked me for my phone. He was like, I want you to get some footage of you getting off the plane, something cool to have. And I was like, all right, cool. I didn't think nothing of it. And then when I could see through the double doors leading to the lobby of the airport, I only saw my coach's wife and my old lady at the time. So I was thinking, oh, okay, they welcome us home and everything like that. But once I went through the doors to my right-hand side, with so many people with signs, they started cheering and screaming, bro, and my heart just almost exploded, man. It was incredible. Absolute surprise, and one of the biggest, best moments of my life, man, to see how proud everybody was and to see them celebrate and share that moment with me, man. I mean, that was incredible.
Absolutely, bro. I mean, that was unmatched. That was powerful to watch how that city just came together.
Yeah, man,
to support their own.
It was huge, man.
Of course, people that might not know, are wrestling fans that are watching this, like, who is Malcolm? Just to give a little background, you were on the Contender series over the summer, where you were successful in knocking out Adam Brumhold in the first round with just a nasty right. Anybody that hasn't seen that knockout, I can't stress enough. Like, that thing was smooth. You need to go check out YouTube. How satisfying, though, was it in that moment, for all that hard work, the years of, that 9-to-5 job, and then training and then fighting in these cages, how big of a moment was that, man, to finally pay it off?
It was incredible, man, because, that goal of becoming a UFC fighter, and not just becoming a UFC fighter, becoming the first one out of my team ever, one of the first out of Augusta ever. And like you said, all the years of hard work and sacrifice, that was this goal I had, but that goal forever seemed bigger than life. A long time, it seemed like something that was just a dream, not an actual thing I was going to accomplish. So to get the phone call, to go out there, to go to Vegas, to fight in that cage, to see Dana White right there, DC right there, you know what I mean? And to win in that fashion, Man, from that moment all the way to when he called my name for the contract, it was just like the most surreal, dreamlike experience, man. It was incredible. You know, it was my first time in Vegas. I mean, it was
Yeah.
just everything about it was a dream, man. And that's one of those things that still feel unreal when I look back on like how magical that trip was for me.
You know, and I've wanted to ask you for a long time, and I'll ask you here. I know you personally, and I know how like genuinely nice and just a good person you are.
Thank you, man.
But that dude that I saw walk through them doors in the Apex and walk into that cage,
Yeah,
man, that was a different dude.
that's right.
Can you go back to that moment, you know, maybe right before that bell rings, and can you think of what that last thought was before, you know, that fight starts? Like what's going through your mind at that point? Because all the hard work, all the preparation, that's done. Now we're
Right.
just fighting. You know, what was that thought process?
You know, I got to this place where, you know, when I fight, I see nobody but my opponent. And I mean, of course I hear my coaches. Of course I know the ref is there. But, you know, I remember after my fight ended, I had to ask the ref, I was like, where's Dana at? Because I never even took the time when I walked out to notice where he was at because it didn't matter to me. You know what I mean? The only thing that mattered to me was the task at hand and the fact that this guy in front of me, I'm here to knock him out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everything goes quiet. I mean, you know, the walkout sometimes it's a good time, sometimes it's exciting. But like you said, once I go into the cage, the music stops, and the ref asks me if I'm ready. Everything slows down, and it's just about me and this dude in front of me. And that fight was no different. You know, fortunately, the nerves didn't get to me. The event, the crowd, the people like Dana and all that was there. It didn't really change that ability of mine to focus and really get tunnel vision on my opponent.
Right.
And so that's what it was, man. When I get into the cage and the ref says, "Are you ready?" You know, there's nothing else going on in my mind. I'm not thinking about the crowd back home. I'm not thinking about nothing except me and this guy and coming out on top with a knockout.
Hell yeah. And that's exactly what you did.
That's right.
Now that it's behind you, and we're gonna wrap up the Contender stuff, but now that it's behind you, you know, and you can look back on it with 2020 vision, what would you say was the hardest part of that Contender series build up and ultimately the fight? You know, obviously there's an immense physical strain on you preparing, getting into camp, but I have to imagine mentally that had to be hard to deal with. Like you said, you're chasing this dream that you've had since, you know, you were smaller, you know, all the sacrifices, you're thinking about all this stuff, all the pressure. Like you said, you want to be the first to do something. Not only do
Yeah.
you want to do this incredible task, but you want to be the first person from your region to do it. You know, what would you say was the hardest part of it?
It was 100% the pressure because everybody knows that the Dana White Contender Series is you fight and you get signed or you don't. You know, it's not like now where I'm gonna go fight and whether I win or lose, I've got more fights on my contract. Like I'm a UFC athlete, I'm contracted. You know what I mean? I have a job. I didn't have a job, and you know, the Contender Series is the ultimate, you know, job interview, like they said. You know, I go out there and the people in the world that's never seen me, ESPN has never seen me, you know, DC, the only thing they know is about what's on that sheet of paper with my bio on it, you know? And all the people from Augusta, though, they know that I'm there and I have to perform to get signed. And I think that was the hardest part. You know, the camp was like all my other camps. It was good. I mean, we do what we do in camp. We do what we do on the training mats. But when I finally hopped on that flight and I was finally in Vegas and I was sharing pictures that I was in Vegas, you know, and I could tell the hope and the movement in the city behind me and knowing how many people was gonna watch and knowing that I either make it or I don't tonight.
Yeah.
Um, that was crazy, man. It was a huge weight. And I would be lying if I said I didn't think it was going to affect me going into the fight. And maybe it
Yeah.
did. I mean, maybe it made me better.
Yeah.
But I felt it all through my weight cut. I was thinking about it all through the build-up, all through the face-offs, all through the warm-ups, you know. Everything I felt the pressure of the moment of you either get signed or you don't. But, you know, I went in there and did what I did, so.
You know, is it crazy to think maybe, you know, you might even be looser going into this first fight as a UFC competitor as opposed to the Contender Series? Because, you know,
Yeah.
not to dismiss it, but you're on house money now. Like, you don't have that pressure. You still have a
Yeah.
different pressure, obviously, but do you feel more relaxed now going into camp for this fight?
Yeah, bro, I did it. And I mean, obviously, bro, I got so much more I want to accomplish. But, bro,
Yeah.
I did it. Like, I made it, bro. I'm a UFC athlete. At this point, now all I have to do is fight the people they put in front of me. Like, but the hard part was to get signed. And I mean, I
Yeah.
know it's even harder to stay, but
Yeah.
you just speak about, wrapping your head around those huge moments. That was that huge moment for me, and now I feel like I belong. Adam Bramhall, 13-2, was a very respected striker, very confident striker, and I think he was better than I allowed him to show himself that night. So when I did what I did, man, that furthermore stamped, who I am, what I'm capable of, and what my trajectory is gonna be. I knew
Yeah.
I knew what I could do to him, and I know what I'm capable of doing to the guys they're gonna put in front of me, and so that just boosted my confidence even more, man. So yeah, I think it's less pressure on this one than it was in the last one, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure. So what was that first conversation? And I don't know if you got to have a full blown conversation with Dana, after winning the Contender series. Obviously, he congratulated you, on camera on the show. He was very impressed with you. Were you able to speak privately with him that night going forward? And what was that conversation like?
Yeah, unfortunately, I only got like very small moments with Dana. I mean, he was
Yeah.
pretty busy that night. He had the presser he had to do afterwards. But he did come up to me. He gave me a bottle of his howler liquor. That was cool. He introduced himself to myself, my teammates, my friends. They let all my friends in the back. It was amazing. And he took pictures with us, shook my hand, and told me that knockout was incredible. I mean, he showed me my love, gave me my flowers, and it was pretty cool, man. It was exciting, man, to be talking to Dana White, the Dana White, the guy
Yeah.
that is the pioneer of the business, and him give you that acknowledgement for something you accomplished on that stage. I feel like I debatably had one of the best knockouts that season, and he
Yeah.
let me know that. So it was
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah, I'm biased, but yeah, that was
Of
that was
course.
nasty. It's
Of course. I
smooth.
appreciate it, homie.
And we talked a little bit off camera about this, so I kind of think I know your answer. But have you had any chance, whether it be at the Performance Center, at the UFC, at the Apex or anything, um, to come across any other fighters or anybody really involved in UFC? And has anybody been like supportive and helpful in this transition from being, a professional mixed martial artist, but now like you're on the level now, like this is the
Yeah.
big leagues.
Right, right, right.
Have you
Um,
come across anybody that's, helped you transition?
Not really, man. Like I said that night of my fight. Now we had a good time with DC, man. DC is a very personable guy. He's fun, and my coach actually walked up to him and he told him like, "We got some guys that want to meet you," and we was incredibly excited to meet DC. And he chopped it up with us, made some jokes, took some pictures. We had a real good time with him. Um, but as far as like anybody outside of that night that I was at, the Apex for my fight, I haven't really talked to too many people or had any too much guidance as far as next steps to that level. So to be honest, I still do kind of have that disconnect mentally, about what it's gonna be like being in a room full of guys that I've seen on different cards, and what it's gonna
Yeah,
be like sharing the cage on that stage. Um, but like I said, I got the confidence and boost knowing where I belong in my last fight, so it's all good.
absolutely. And that DC interaction kind of leads me to my next question. From a fan perspective, because this is the Fans View podcast,
Mhm,
you're a fan of the UFC before you were in it. You
mhm.
know, what are you most excited about, your first? And I say that like, what's Malcolm getting giddy about? Like, are you thinking about like, oh shit, like Bruce Buffer's gonna say my name? You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah,
Joe Rogan's gonna be like, look at what Wellmaker's doing. You know what I'm saying? Like
yeah,
that
yeah.
kind of what are you most excited for, like from a fan perspective?
Um, yeah, I think meeting somebody like Joe Rogan would be crazy. Like because funny story, but when we went and fought at the Apex for the Contender series, we was in the locker room, and we saw DC come into the back to speak to another one of the athletes because he was asking him questions for his bio. And me and my coach, yeah, we was like, oh my goodness, it's DC. Bro, we were over from the side taking pictures of him talking to somebody else. Like, we was having like a real fan moment. And it was incredible to have that moment, and then a few hours later have a real conversation with this guy. So I think the Bruce Buffer moment, man, like him announcing my name would be crazy. Meeting Joe Rogan would be crazy. I always had this like dream of what if I was on the Joe Rogan podcast, because I used to have an hour transit to and from work, so I used to listen to the Joe Rogan podcast
Yeah.
faithfully every day for almost 2 years, man. So I love that guy, man. He has no idea how much like the people he brought into his podcast helped me learn how to talk like this. I feel like
Yeah.
his podcast taught me how to talk like this. Listen to those guys articulate
Yeah.
themselves. So being in those places, talking to those kind of people, huge fans of him, man. And then like one day, I really, really hope to share a card with Khabib and Islam, man, and possibly meet those guys. I've become a huge fan of those guys. I love to shake their hand, have a short conversation. If I could train with them, that'd be amazing. But more than anything, just be around those guys, that brotherhood, man. Those guys are awesome, man.
That's awesome. I love that you're able to kind of pull back that curtain, because like I know as a fan of you and a friend of yours, I consider myself to be, like,
Yeah.
I'm excited to hear Bruce Buffer say your name. I'm excited to hear Rogan and Megan O'Leary and everybody talk about you. Like, I can't imagine how it feels in your shoes.
Yeah.
But we're gonna start winding this thing down. Obviously, getting down to business. April 26th, Kansas City. That's a business trip. Cameron Simon, what's the mindset now that you're starting to inch closer and closer to stepping inside that cage? I saw you on Instagram the other day, and I kind of screenshot it because I loved it. You said the energy changes when you got a name, a place, and a date. 7 weeks locked and loaded. What's that mindset now that, like, this is real?
Yeah, ever since my fight, I train nonstop. So ever since my fight, I've still been in the gym. I've been putting my teammates through camp. So we've had hard training, hard conditioning. I've been very, very focused on a lot of my skill development. But, when you get a contract, when you have a date, and you know what you're up against, the mentality completely changes. I mean, you really like gear everything you're doing towards this one person. And it's not personal, but it's very much more so intentional. Everything I'm doing is intentional. Every shot I'm throwing, I'm imagining that guy putting himself in position to get hit by it. Every time I'm defending a takedown, I'm imagining that guy putting me on my back in Kansas City. So it's a lot easier for me to push. And don't get me wrong, bro, I push hard regularly, fight or not. But it's just different when I'm pushing, and I know exactly what the person who's trying to take half of my check looks like. I know exactly what he fights like. I know exactly what he sounds like. And it makes me lean into it. It makes me want that adversity with him. So it's very direct, it's very intentional, and it's very, very, it's hardcore right now, man. And it will be for the next 7 weeks, all the way until I hop on the scale and I get in that cage.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That intensity's already starting to come out of you.
I love this feeling, man. I get excited when I get to get like this,
So as we start to dig a little deeper into 2025, aside from having your first UFC fight, what are the goals you've set for yourself, and how often would you like to fight this year? Obviously, we don't want to look past Cameron Simon. He deserves your full respect and attention right now. But have you thought about it maybe before this fight was announced? Like, I'd love to double dip in 2025. Or are it one of those things where you're just kind of taking it as you go?
Yeah, man. I want 2025 to be my breakout year, man. I want 3 fights at least. I'd fight more if I could. And I want to make a UFC highlight reel. I have a highlight reel with the career I have so far, but I want a UFC highlight reel where I'm in their shorts, I'm in their octagon, and I'm getting finishes on guys. I'm hitting guys with shots to really set up my climb for the following year. 2025, I want to get in there with some guys to really show the world what I can do at this level, to start setting up my climb into the ranks, and eventually try to start fighting for a title after that.
That's right. Get a little number by that name. Things start to get even more serious.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, I have to ask this question. Like, obviously, you're in the show now. Like I said, who's that dream opponent? And I want to give you this in 2 ways. I'd love to hear a realistic, like, fellow bantamweight that you think is realistic.
Mm.
And then I'd love to hear what your dream opponent would be. Any weight class, any era, just your dream opponent.
Oh man, that's tough. If I had to say, you know, so realistically speaking, a year ago, my teammate Joe had a fight in Texas, and I had been watching Contender series, and so I knew all the prospects, I knew all the athletes, and the one that everybody always asked me about from last season is Peyton Talbot. I watched Peyton Talbot fight Cameron Simon in the living room of the Airbnb with my teammates in Texas. I remember it, and I remember one felt like. This dude's legit. I mean, Peyton Talbot is solid, man. He's got power. He's got the energy. He's got everything. He's going to be huge. But I also remember feeling like I can do this too, though. I know I can do what he's doing if they put me in position. So they're putting me in position, man. And ever since, the rise of Peyton Talbot and all these interviews and stuff I have and all these fan comments and stuff, they always throw his name around. So I honestly feel like, hopefully he can come back off of the loss he just had and create that hype train again. Hopefully I can build my hype train. And hopefully when we're both cracking ranks, maybe that's a fight that can line up and be a super duper banger for the fans. I think that'd be a huge fight, a fun fight. And a lot of it has to do with the respect I have for this guy or have for this guy and how I watched his fights coming up and how I was hungry and pursuing those same exact tracks. So I think that's a fun fight. I think that's something I'd extremely enjoy. But I also think about this one is far, right? But Marab, man, maybe one day Marab's coming down off of his ranks and I'm coming up into mine, and that's my gatekeeper fight. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? Because it can only be one machine, right? So
that's right. That's
so
right.
that'd be super fun. That'd be a super tough fight. But man, just imagine what it would do for my career if I could go out there and I could bang with Marab and put on the show, or even potentially finish him. I mean, it'd be crazy. So
That,
those are the fights that I think are both realistic.
yeah.
For sure, Peyton Talbot, Marab, maybe. But of all time, oh man, that's tough, man. I almost I almost want to say maybe like somebody like Jose Aldo, bro. I remember when I
Yes.
first got into fighting, Jose Aldo was one of the guys that I knew nothing about, and I realized he was one of the guys that was a legend that was still fighting. So I went back and watched all his old fights and just saw what he was doing to people. And that would almost be like Izzy fighting Anderson Silva. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It'd almost be
Yeah.
like me fighting Jose Aldo. I think that'd be an incredible fight. I think that'd be an absolute banger. But once again, the timeline might not match up on somebody like a legend like that. And if anything, I just would love to meet the dude, shake his hand. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer now.
Yeah.
An amazing guy.
I love that. That's a great answer, man.
Yeah,
All
man.
right, and finally, I'm gonna let you go on this one, but you signed with the UFC, and that goal has been achieved. Knowing you, how driven you are, you're on to the next. The last time you were here, I asked you, what does success mean to you? And you gave me a beautifully thought out answer. This time, I want to get a little more specific. And obviously, this is your first fight we're going into. You have a lot of fights, a lot of titles to win. You got a long way to go. But if I ask Malcolm Wellmaker before his first fight, what do you want your legacy to be in the UFC when you're all done and you're finished up? What do you want your legacy to be?
Man, I want my legacy in the UFC uh, to be about a guy who obviously, I mean, I have that story where I didn't start training until very late in age, and I had a lot of elements of my background that were odds stacked against me. I want that to be my origin story. I want guys to see that I fought through beating all these different reasons that I probably shouldn't have made it, but not just made it. I made it and I was successful. I inspired generations of people to pursue fighting and to make something of it. But also, I want to be known as being real. I don't want to be a guy that's doing things and be a character. I want people to know me as a person, same as they know me as a fighter. I want people to know how much I love my city, about how much I try to take my influence and stay tied into my community. I want people to look at what I do and say, man, I could be a real life hero in touch with my people if I do things the way that he did things. That's what I want my legacy to be. I want it to be full of knockouts. I want it to be full of money. You know what I mean? I want some jewelry in there too.
Yeah.
But I want more than anything for them to be inspired by my origin and to be inspired by the way that I'm trying to be a real life hero to the people around me. That's what I want it to be.
Well said, man. Well put. On that note, Malcolm, man, I want to thank you so much for coming on. Everybody, check Malcolm out. He's on a UFC fight night. Even if the funds aren't there, he's going to be on ESPN. You don't even have to, put out the money for pay-per-view. Yep. Thank God. April 26th, Kansas City, Malcolm the Machine Wellmaker versus Cameron Simon. Let's go out and get this W. The Fans View podcast.
Yes,
hopefully he's going to be out there in Kansas City supporting.
Yes, sir.
Y'all make sure you just check out, give Malcolm some love, hit him up on the socials, and good luck, brother, from the Fans View podcast. We just want to give you all the luck in the world, my man.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me on. And like you said, April 26th, man, tune in and don't blink. I'm trying to get me a performance bonus.
That's right. Well, yes, you take care, Malcolm. Hopefully we'll have you on again once you're 1-0.
That's good. Let's do it.
All right, folks. That's going to be it for this episode of the Fantasy Podcast. Like I said, if you enjoyed, hit Malcolm up on socials. Check him out April 26th on ESPN. And don't forget to call your mom.
Yes, sir.
If you haven't liked or subscribed, you're going to be joking me.